Imagine yourself being chosen to pilot an airplane in the Royal Aircraft Factory B-2, the main aircraft of the Royal Flying Corps, the aerial arm of the British Army, in August 1914. At that time, the B-2 was a marvel for the few who remembered the days when flying was science fiction. However, for many, it still looked like a kite with a motor attached. The aircraft structure was a network of wires covered in fabric, with two positions. The pilot sat at the back, behind the wings, and the observer at the front, just below the central section. The small Renault V8 engine with 60 horsepower, a mess of cylinders, tubes, and pipes, was fully exposed to the elements. The B-2 was so light that even a gentle breeze in the fields made the aircraft sway upon touching the ground. You greet the ground crew, who will help start the engine and remove the wheel chocks, allowing your aircraft to begin the takeoff run. As you watch the airplane you will entrust with your life for the next few hours, your observer opens a box and takes out a large, heavy black camera, carrying it into the cockpit. With both of you settled in, you start the startup procedure. A ground crew member pulls the propeller blades, and the engine begins to cough and sputter. It's your first mission as a pilot on the Western Front, and adrenaline is running high. August 1914 marks the beginning of a journey filled with uncertainties and dangers, but also courage and determination. As the aircraft gains speed on the runway, the wind blows strongly, shaking the fabric wings. The tension mounts with each passing second, until finally, you leave the ground. The noise of the engine and the wind whistling around create a symphony of adventure and suspense. You know you are about to face the unknown, and every moment is crucial. The sight of the field rapidly receding below reinforces the seriousness of the mission. In the sky, the horizon unfolds before your eyes, and the vastness of the battlefield is revealed. Expectations rise. It's a new world above the trenches, and you are in the thick of the action, ready to play your part in the great war machine. Like thousands of men across Europe and indeed the world, you are gearing up for war. But unlike those who will be on solid ground or aboard ships at sea, your future is uncertain. They have an idea of what the war will be like for them, but for you and the rest of the Royal Flying Corps, everything is a big question mark. Just flying is an impressive feat, not to mention the challenge of playing a military role. Yet here you are, less than 20 minutes from the front lines, as one of the astonishing pioneers of military aviation. This is a day in the life of a World War I pilot. Coming from a British upper-middle-class family, it was always expected that you would pursue a career in the army. Many men in your family served in the cavalry over generations, and you spent many nights listening to bold tales of their adventures across the British Empire, imagining the day when you would add your own exploits to those incredible stories. From an early age, you excelled in sports, especially team sports like rugby, which were always seen as a good introduction to military life, where every man has his place and learns to work as part of a team. Now, nearing the completion of your education, it's clear that your destiny lies in the skies. As you prepare for your mission, tension mounts. The uncertainty of what lies ahead makes your heart beat faster. You adjust your uniform and mentally review the procedures you've rehearsed so many times. The ground crew scurries around the aircraft, making final adjustments. The sound of the engine roaring to life is loud and rough, a harbinger of the impending action. Every move is crucial. Every decision could be the difference between life and death. The aircraft begins to move, and you feel the weight of responsibility on your shoulders. The noise of the engine grows louder, and with a jolt, the plane gains speed. The wind rushes against your face as the plane takes off, and the ground quickly recedes. The trenches below become a distant sight as you climb into the skies. The vast battlefield unfolds before you, and adrenaline rushes through your veins. In the sky, everything is different. The apparent serenity hides the dangers you know are everywhere. Looking around, you scan for any sign of the enemy. Every shadow, every movement could be a threat, The chill of the wind contrasts with the heat of tension. You are one of the first to experience aerial warfare, a pioneer in a new form of combat. As you approach the front lines, the reality of war becomes more tangible. Explosions on the ground and enemy planes on the horizon remind you that everything can change at any moment. You brace yourself for what's to come, aware that each mission is a new chance to make history and, at the same time, a battle for survival. In 1912, your life took an unexpected turn. On a sunny, bright day, a strange contraption made noise as it approached your boarding school, landing in a field nearby. It was the first time you saw an airplane, piloted by one of your teachers, an aviation enthusiast. He was one of the first in the UK to obtain an airworthiness certificate after joining an aero club. The plane was a small biplane, similar to the legendary model the Wright brothers used to take off for the first time in 1903, but with some improvements. You were one of the few lucky students chosen to take a ride. It was a terrifying experience. The aircraft could barely take off, stuttering at just over 30 miles per hour. It felt like it would fall from the sky at any moment. But after a 5-minute circuit over the school, the wheels finally touched the ground again. You felt a mix of relief for being back on solid ground and a new passion. The certainty that you could survive this experience and the desire to fly again. Your teacher, seeing your excitement, suggested that you join the newly formed Royal Flying Corps, RFC, of the Army. Passing the rigorous entrance exams was a challenge. Besides testing your physical and mental abilities, they also evaluated your coordination and ability to handle pressure. Shortly after, you were sent to Farnborough to begin your training. Although you had been in the Army for a short time, it was clear that the Royal Flying Corps, with less than 2 years in 1914, was not popular among regular soldiers. Many considered the RFC a waste of men and materials, thinking that aircraft would be nothing more than a passing fad. It didn't help that the RFC itself was still learning its trade and had not had the chance to fully demonstrate its potential. The tension was palpable. As you walked through the training camp, you could feel the stares of veteran soldiers, skeptical about the usefulness of aviation. But you and your flight mates were determined to prove them wrong. Every takeoff and every landing were important steps in the journey to show the world the value of military aviation. The early flying lessons were filled with challenges and intense emotions. With each maneuver, adrenaline flowed freely. The feeling of being in control of such a fragile machine, defying gravity, was indescribable. But along with the excitement came responsibility. The sound of the engine, the wind in your face, and the vastness of the sky constantly reminded you that any mistake could be fatal. You knew the road ahead would be tough. There were many doubts and dangers, but also a promise of adventure and innovation. Each flight was a step toward transforming aviation into a respected and indispensable force in war. And so, with courage and determination, you prepared to write a new chapter in the history of military aviation, facing the unknown and embracing the challenge of being one of the pioneers of the Royal Flying Corps. Accidents are common among RFC members, whether on the ground with inexperienced aircraft handlers and engineers, or in the air with the pilots themselves, as it is the Army's first truly technical branch. Mechanics become as important as any other soldier, as their skills in maintaining the often troublesome aero engines are essential for every flight. Discipline between them and the pilots is not as strict as in other units, but there is still a certain distance between you and the mechanics, upon whose hands you trust your life. Eager to start flying, you end up learning as much about engine repair and maintenance as the mechanics themselves. It is expected that, should you encounter problems during flight, you can repair the aircraft after landing in a field and fly it back to base. You also need to become proficient in hand-starting the propeller for other pilots, a difficult and potentially fatal task if done incorrectly. Finally, the moment arrives for your first lesson in an airplane. It lasts only a few seconds as you briefly leave the ground and learn to bring it back to Earth slowly and smoothly. Eventually, you progress to larger aircraft, such as the B-2, which is quickly becoming the backbone of the RFC. The action starts to heat up as you approach your first solo takeoff. The tension in the air is palpable. The engine coughs and sputters before finally roaring to life. With adrenaline pumping, you push the throttle forward and feel the aircraft gaining speed on the runway. The wind hits your face hard as the plane begins to lift off the ground, swaying slightly. In the air, every second is a new thrill. Sweaty hands grip the controls tightly as you adjust the angle of ascent. The field below becomes a distant blur, and for a moment, you feel absolute freedom. But reality soon sets in, and you remember the training. Stay calm, make gentle adjustments, and always be prepared for any emergency. During the flight, you scan the horizon, looking for signs of potential trouble. The slight vibration of the engine and the sound of the wind are constant companions, reminding you that safety depends on every decision you make. You feel like a true pioneer, exploring the skies and facing the unknown with courage and determination. The return to the ground is equally challenging. The descent must be precise. Any mistake can be fatal. Carefully, you guide the aircraft back to the runway, feeling every small adjustment in the controls. When you finally touch down, relief and euphoria mix. You did it. Each flight is a step forward in your journey as an RFC pilot, and each successful landing is a victory against adversity. Days pass, and you continue to learn and evolve. Each experience, each flight, each engine repair, all contribute to your growth. The relationship with the mechanic strengthens, mutual respect grows, and together, you face the challenges of the airfield. The adventure is just beginning, and you are ready to write your own story in the turbulent skies of war. So, the news arrives. Austro-Hungarian Archduke Franz Ferdinand has been assassinated, and Europe is marching towards war. Your flying hours barely reach 2 digits, but soon you'll be heading to France to confront the German assaults. Your mission will be to provide generals with a privileged view of the battlefield. The B-2 takes time to ascend into the skies, with its small engine coaxing the propeller that pulls the biplane, filling the cabin with soot and gasoline smoke. In the rear cockpit, you're somewhat shielded by your observer. As the wheels leave the ground, they keep spinning for a while, and you feel the aircraft start to veer left, a common quirk when taking off in a B-2. You counter with the pedals controlling the rudder. As you climb, you're careful not to pull the joystick too much to avoid losing speed and stalling, or alternatively, running the engine out of fuel, as it's fed by a tank below your observer solely by gravity. Still climbing, you have time to reflect on the effectiveness of your missions in the coming days. The B-2 is classified as a military aircraft, but you know that in reality, there's hardly any difference between a military and a civilian aircraft. The B-2 wasn't designed to do anything other than fly with a reasonable chance of the pilot returning safely to the ground, which is already a crucial feature in these early days of military flight. Here, anyone with flying hours in 2 digits is considered an experienced aviator. The first casualties of war in the RFC were killed during the attempt to deploy to France when their aircraft crashed in England. The pilot in question was Lieutenant Robert Skene, whom you knew. He was the first British pilot to loop an aircraft. You saw the man fly. He was no novice. That makes you understand how dangerous this game is. While flying, you also ponder the armament you carry as standard. Despite your aircraft being classified as military, the reality is that the distinction between military and civilian aircraft is still blurred. Danger is always present, and each mission brings a new wave of tension. You look to the horizon, where war is rapidly approaching. Training days were intense, but nothing can truly prepare you for the chaos and unpredictability of aerial combat. Your instructor's words echo in your mind. Keep calm, trust your instincts, and never underestimate the enemy. The engine keeps roaring, the propeller spinning furiously as you gain altitude. The battlefield stretches below you, a tapestry of trenches and destruction. Each flight is a delicate dance between life and death, and you're determined to make every second count. Suspense grows as you know that at any moment, everything can change. And it's with this mix of fear and determination that you prepare to face the unknown, writing your own chapter in the history of military aviation. They carry service revolvers, and your observer has a rifle. The idea of attaching a gun to the aircraft seems ridiculous at this moment. Opinion among your comrades and senior officers is divided on how an airplane can be used as a weapon, or even if it should be used. Some pilots cling to the notion of a code of honor among aviators, believing that killing a fellow airman simply isn't right. However, there are already those eager to turn their planes into killing machines, wanting to mount bombs under the fuselage and guns to shoot down German aircraft. For now, your role is merely reconnaissance. After 6.5 minutes of ascent, you're at 3,500 feet. The world seems much smaller, and you level the aircraft, feeling secure for the first time. But deep down, you know that couldn't be further from the truth. On August 22, 1914, the RFC lost its first aircraft to enemy fire when German infantry shot down 2nd Lieutenant Vincent Falls and his observer Lieutenant Charles George Gordon Bailey, who were flying in an Avro 504 biplane over Belgium. Both men died in the subsequent crash. Flying at just 60 miles per hour, the image of green and brown fields passes slowly below you, interrupted only by a few thin clouds. Suddenly, your observer spots something and signals for you to look down, to the right. There below are British and French troops, gathered in long lines like ants, marching eastward to face the German advance and prevent them from invading Belgium and France. Looking down on them from above, you feel disconnected from the war, as if you're watching a grand spectacle for your entertainment. Now you begin to understand why the RFC is viewed with such disdain by the common troops. From your elevated position, while they trudge along rutted roads or gallop on horseback across the French countryside, you feel less like a soldier and more like a spectator. Averting your gaze from the people below, you scan the horizon for familiar landmarks to confirm your position on the map you've hidden in the cramped cockpit. Navigating in the air is still a challenging skill. The engine continues to roar, and the slight sway of the plane keeps your senses sharp. Suddenly, a shadow passes swiftly over your wing. Your heart races as you scan the sky for the origin of the shadow. A distant dot rapidly approaches, and you recognize the silhouette of an enemy aircraft. Tension mounts, and you signal for your observer to prepare. The enemy is closing in, and you know this is not a drill. Every second counts. You maneuver the B-2, trying to gain the upper hand. The air around you seems to hum with the imminence of the confrontation. Your observer prepares the rifle, eyes fixed on the enemy plane. Adrenaline surges, and the landscape below becomes a blur as you focus on the threat ahead. The confrontation is inevitable. The sound of the engines intensifies, and the air feels electrified. The enemy is almost upon you, and your mind races for strategies to get out of this situation alive. The suspense is almost palpable, and the war, which once seemed distant and almost unreal, is now dangerously close. It's a fight for survival, and you're determined not to be another casualty of aerial warfare. The enemy draws nearer and nearer, and you know the next moments will be crucial. With courage and determination, you prepare to face the unknown, aware that the history of military aviation is being written with every passing second. In the RFC, we're still far from mastering the art of aerial navigation completely, and stories of pilots flying low and slow over traffic signs, or even landing in fields to ask locals for directions, aren't as absurd as they seem. During one of your missions, you notice a small hole in the underside of the left wing. That's when it hits you. While flying over friendly troops, at least one soldier has fired off a few shots at you, and a bullet hit the aircraft. Luckily, There was no significant damage beyond the small hole in the fabric of the wing, about the size of a coin. But what this hole implies is what really gets you nervous. It's not just the enemy you have to fear. Motorized aircraft are still a novelty, an unfamiliar sight in the sky, and many scared infantrymen automatically assume any plane is the enemy. The situation is exacerbated by the lack of recognizable symbols painted on the aircraft for quick identification from the ground. Union Jacks have been painted on the tail of your B-2, but they're hard to distinguish from a few meters away, let alone from a few thousand feet. The French have started painting cockades with the national colors of France in circles on their aircraft, and the Germans have also begun painting black crosses on theirs. Surely, the RFC will eventually adopt its own markings, simple but highly visible. For now, though, you're as good as an enemy to the man on the ground. The engine roars, and the slight sway of the plane keeps your senses sharp. Suddenly, a shadow passes swiftly over the wing. Your heart races as you scan the sky for the origin of the shadow. A distant dot rapidly approaches, and you recognize the silhouette of an enemy aircraft. Tension mounts, and you signal for your observer to prepare. The enemy is closing in, and you know this is not a drill. Every second counts. You maneuver the B-2, trying to gain the upper hand. The air around you seems to hum with the imminence of the confrontation. Your observer prepares the rifle, eyes fixed on the enemy plane. Adrenaline surges, and the landscape below becomes a blur as you focus on the threat ahead. The confrontation is inevitable. The sound of the engines intensifies, and the air feels electrified. The enemy is almost upon you, and your mind races for strategies to get out of this situation alive. The suspense is almost palpable, and the war, which once seemed distant and almost unreal, is now dangerously close. It's a fight for survival, and you're determined not to be another casualty of aerial warfare. The enemy draws nearer and nearer, and you know the next moments will be crucial. With courage and determination, you prepare to face the unknown, aware that the history of military aviation is being written with every passing second. British officers have already lodged complaints, believing that the RFC is revealing their positions by flying over certain areas. It's possible that some of them have ordered their own men to shoot at you. Your markers for the reconnaissance mission are clear: a church to the east, a river to the west, and a railway station to the north. These points indicate that you are in the designated area of interest, where hundreds, perhaps thousands, of German soldiers are amassing, ready to advance with the aim of capturing Paris. With the stick and rudder, you bank the plane to the left, steering it north towards the railway station. It's here that you spot the enemy for the first time. A short distance from the station, your observer points out dozens of men running along the tracks, repairing damage caused by the retreating French army, aiming to slow down trains carrying German troops. You need this crucial information, and as you align the aircraft perpendicular to the tracks, your observer begins to rise from his seat, camera in hand. Without a seatbelt, he relies on you to keep the plane as steady as possible while he prepares to take the photos. The task isn't easy, with the wings and rigging of the B-2 blocking much of the view, but he skillfully manages to capture some images. Some pilots have started taking photos on their own, with the observer only loading the film and passing it back to them, so they can take the picture with the best view. This practice is unofficial in the RFC and could potentially be disastrous, as the pilot ceases to focus on flying to try to get the best shots. Turning southeast, you soon spot numerous tents scattered across fields around an isolated farm. These are obviously troops awaiting the repair of the railway. You align the aircraft to take more photos, but then you start to see clouds of blue smoke rising from behind sandbags and makeshift platforms. The B-2 begins to shake, and you observe more holes appearing in the wings and along the fuselage as you're hit by German machine gun fire. Adrenaline rushes. You maneuver desperately to evade the shots, but the holes in the aircraft increase. Your observer, with the camera still in hand, struggles to stay in his seat as you make sharp movements to dodge the bullets. Smoke and the smell of gasoline mix in the air, and every second feels like an eternity. You feel the weight of responsibility, knowing that these photos are vital for the generals to understand the enemy's position. With your heart racing, you continue to maneuver, trying to stay calm as your mind races to find a way out. The distance to the base seems immense, but you know you need to get this information back. Time is against you, and the aircraft trembles with each new impact. You glance at the horizon, seeking familiar landmarks, trying to calculate the fastest route to safety. The noise of gunfire is deafening, and the scene below you turns into a chaotic battleground. The feeling of being in a deadly game of cat and mouse intensifies, and you know that one wrong move could be your end. With courage and determination, you focus on your mission. The fate of many may depend on the photos you're managing to take. And so, with the enemy at your heels and the plane damaged, you plot your route back, determined to complete your mission and survive to fight another day. You fight the instinct to veer the aircraft, knowing you need to maintain stability so your observer can get the shot. It's frustrating, as you can clearly see the target area from your position, but he needs to wait for the perfect angle. You curse yourself for adhering so strictly to the rules and begin to consider taking the photos yourself in the future, anything to minimize exposure time to enemy fire. Finally, he signals that he got the photo, and you immediately start to veer away from the camps. You wonder how much damage the aircraft has sustained, but there's no way to know until you land. For now, all is well. Neither you nor your observer have been hit, so you focus on returning to the airfield to deliver the vital photos. You've been in the air for nearly 2 hours, and as you approach friendly lines again, you start to wonder if you can expect more British bullets coming your way. Will one of them be the one to end you? Your thoughts are abruptly interrupted by your observer, who begins frantically waving his right arm northwestward. You look to where he's pointing, but see nothing on the ground. It's then you realize he's spotted something in the air. Squinting your eyes, you distinguish the black silhouettes of something resembling a bird of odd shape, but soon realize you're looking at a German airplane. It's a Taube, designed to look like a bird. The sight of the enemy in the air makes your heart race. You know you're in danger. The Taube may be armed, and you need to act fast. Gripping the stick firmly, you start maneuvering the aircraft to try to escape. Your observer, now more alert than ever, keeps his eyes fixed on the enemy, ready for any sign of attack. The silence of the sky is broken by the sound of the Taube's engine approaching. You feel the tension in the air, the fear of being shot down at any moment. Every move you make is calculated, trying to stay out of the line of fire. Adrenaline courses through your veins as you perform evasive maneuvers, trying to get away from the enemy plane. Finally, after what seems like an eternity, you manage to distance yourself enough from the Taube. The German plane, perhaps realizing it couldn't catch you, gives up the chase. With a sigh of relief, you continue your path back to the airfield. The images taken by your observer are crucial to the war strategy, and you know your effort was worth it. As you land, you can hardly believe you escaped. The airfield is ahead of you, and you feel immense relief as you touch down. With adrenaline still high, you and your observer disembark from the aircraft, carrying the precious photos. The bullet marks on the fuselage are a reminder of how dangerous your mission is, but you know the duty has been fulfilled. As you hand over the photos to the officers, you mentally prepare for the next mission. You know each flight is a struggle for survival, but the importance of your work motivates you to continue. You look to the sky, already thinking about what's to come, ready to face the challenges that aerial warfare brings. The German plane descends toward you, and you feel the adrenaline coursing through your veins. Your observer prepares to shoot, and you maneuver your aircraft to confront the enemy. Both fly toward each other, and you await the right moment to turn and allow your observer to fire with his rifle. It seems like an eternity until the German plane is within range. With caution, you tilt the aircraft to the left as your observer aims and fires over your head. The shots ring out in the air as you exchange fire with the enemy. For several seconds, you're engaged in a tense aerial duel, but despite the shots, hitting the target is challenging. Your observer is eager to chase the enemy, but you know fuel is running low, and it's crucial to return to base with the photos of the German positions. Your B-2 hits the ground of the airfield with a jolt, and you feel the impact reverberate through the aircraft. Skillfully, you maintain control, easing off the throttle as you roll through the grass. The skids beneath the aircraft help prevent damage to the propeller as you glide over the uneven terrain. The tension eases as you reach the final yards. With your heart still racing and a few scratches on your body, you step out of the plane. Despite the challenges faced, you've managed to accomplish your mission. Now, it's time to deliver the photos and prepare for the next flight. The war in the air is relentless, but you're determined to face every challenge with courage and determination. The ground crew rushes to restrain the aircraft as you hand over the notes and camera to command. After reporting the damage to your kite, it's time for a brief rest and a quick meal before the next mission. The generals leading the war are always hungry for information, and you've provided valuable intelligence insights. Dealing with the RFC may not be easy for the troops on the ground, but you know these flights are crucial to keeping the Germans in check. The element of surprise is gone now, thanks to the aircraft, and you feel like a vital part of that effort. You're certain that in the coming years, aviation will only grow in importance, but you could never imagine the terrible toll in lives that will come with it. This is just another day in the life of a World War I pilot, but within a few years, aerial warfare would evolve into something even more fierce and intense. The legendary aerial battles to come will define an era. From the France of 1914, where it all began, to the long-range bombings and anti-ship attacks, aviation became the cornerstone of military planning. It all started with a few fearless men and their flying machines on a cold, clear morning. After a brief interval for rest and sustenance, you prepare for the next mission with a mix of anxiety and determination. The orders are clear: more reconnaissance over enemy lines, more vital information for the generals in command. As you head towards your aircraft, you can't help but notice the tension in the air. The base is bustling, with a constant hum of war preparation activities. Worried looks and anxious murmurs fill the air as you and your crew gear up to take off once again. With the engine roaring, you ascend into the sky, leaving behind the relative safety of the ground. With each passing moment, the tension mounts, knowing that the next mission could be even more perilous than the last. As you fly over enemy lines, you and your observer remain vigilant for any signs of activity. Your heart pounds in your chest, your eyes scanning the terrain below for any suspicious movement. Suddenly, something catches your attention. A column of German soldiers moving towards a strategic position. You know this information is crucial and needs to be delivered as quickly as possible. Without hesitation, you maneuver the aircraft into a better position, and your observer begins to photograph. Every click of the camera is a race against time, knowing that the slightest distraction could mean the difference between the success and failure of the mission. But as you focus on your task, something shifts in the air. A dark shadow suddenly looms, and before you can react, you're embroiled in an intense aerial battle. The enemy is everywhere, and every maneuver is a fight for survival. You know you must stand firm, maneuver your aircraft skillfully, and trust your observer to fend off enemy attacks. Every second feels like an eternity as you struggle to maintain control of the situation. But despite the imminent danger, you cling to the hope of completing the mission and returning safely to base. The fate is in the hands of the sky now as you and your crew face the unknown in the skies of World War I. As the battle in the skies continues to unfold, you find yourself grappling with the forces of gravity and destiny. Every maneuver is calculated, every strategic move crucial to ensuring your survival and the success of the mission. The deafening sound of engines mingles with the roar of weapons, creating a chaotic symphony of war. The wind whips against your face as you face the enemy with courage and determination. For a moment, time seems suspended in the air. You are locked in a deadly duel, where the slightest misstep could mean the difference between life and death. Every shot fired is a risky gamble, every maneuver an act of bravery and skill. But despite the challenges, you and your crew refuse to back down. With skill and determination, you confront the enemy head-on, fighting for the future of your country and your comrades. And then, in the blink of an eye, the battle comes to an end. The enemy retreats, defeated, leaving behind a trail of destruction and chaos. You breathe deeply, feeling the relief of being alive, but knowing that the war is far from over. As you return to base, you wonder what others will think when they hear your story. Has anyone ever seen an aircraft like yours? Or spoken to someone who has piloted in the battle skies? With these thoughts in mind, you disembark from the aircraft and prepare to report your experience to the superiors. As you walk towards headquarters, you remember the importance of sharing stories like this, of honoring the brave men and women who fought and sacrificed so much during the war. And so, with renewed determination, you prepare to tell your story, hoping that it will inspire others to remember and learn from the horrors of war. And as the sun sets over the battlefield, you know that the fight for freedom and peace continues, and that you will be there to face every challenge that comes your way. In the video below, share your experiences and stories of bravery. Leave in the comments your own war memories, and don't forget to like and subscribe to General Jack's channel so you don't miss any narrations and war stories. Together, we can keep alive the memory of those who gave everything for freedom and justice.